welcome to another episode of Hues of Ace, the podcast. My name is Isabel. Episode 4, amazing. Well, as you know, last time we talked about labels on the A spec, so arrow and ace spec, and I hope that someone learned from that. If not, sorry. But now we're just going to focus on the questioning part of maybe being on the A spec or arrow spec. As I've said before, everyone's experiences are different, so you might have a different experience from your best friend or vice versa, etc. So there's a lot of people who use other labels first because they realize that they're not straight. So, and this is me primarily talking about my own experiences as an allo-romantic asexual. So people might call themselves pansexual, for instance, or bisexual when actually they're panromantic, asexual, etc. Or sometimes people call themselves pansexual because they feel the same way about all genders, but that could just mean that they feel the same way towards all genders because it's platonic attraction that they're feeling. So sometimes people grow up later to find that they're actually aromantic and asexual, for instance, or aromantic and allosexual. Well, my own experience with it was all very awkward, the sex jokes and the whole sort of high school thing. I mean, even in middle school, people were dating and kissing each other and things. And of course, I'm not aromantic, but still I felt like, really? You're having a partner at 12 years old? I mean, what is going on? And obviously there's nothing wrong with that, but for myself, personally, it felt odd to me. And of course, I didn't have the right words to really understand how I was feeling and what was going on at that time. All I knew is that I wanted to hold hands, hug certain people more than others, and that some of them I wanted to kiss and some of them I didn't. And there's a lot of different, back and forth. Is it romantic attraction? Is it platonic attraction? Especially in high school when people were talking about more sex topics and things. And I just wasn't into it, to be honest. I just was so... For me, it was very uncomfortable, but it was also a factor that I just wasn't interested. So people would talk about it and I would just be... on the outside, sort of looking in, if that makes sense. So yeah, exactly. Again, I realised that I liked boys and girls as well as other genders for quite an earlier age, so about 14, 15. I know that some people experience that earlier, of course, or later. But for me, it was about 15, yeah. And I called myself bisexual at first because it seemed to work with what I was feeling, and I didn't know the term for pansexual at that point, so I just thought to myself, well, I must be bisexual and that's all there is to it. And I didn't really mind liking girls. I thought, that was great, and girls are great and boys are great too, and that's just how it worked. But as I grew up, I sort of realised that sex was the thing that people wanted to do with other people, and they wanted to do it themselves, and it just, I don't know. Anyway, so I learned about the term pansexual when I was about 17, so then I changed from bisexual to pansexual, and for me that worked for a long time, until I was about 21, Sorry, my phone is going off. I forgot to turn it on silent, obviously. Not very professional, is it? But never mind. So, yeah, as I was saying, I sort of went through the whole high school thing, being bisexual, pansexual. And then when I was about 21, one of my friends mentioned asexuality. And they mentioned that it can actually be a spectrum. And of course, I was very excited about this concept. It's like, I do want romantic relationships, but not necessarily with sex. And that seemed to, for me anyway, that definition seemed to really connect with me. I'm like, oh my god, that's me kind of revelation. So at first I thought I was panromantic demisexual. So I went with that for a bit. And then as I started digging deeper into it and finding out about grey sexuality and aromantic and asexual and, just everything in between, I realised that asexual was much more my kind of thing. So I did that for a bit, panromantic asexual, and then I thought, okay, well, what about biromantic asexual? And now I know that biromantic and panromantic are quite similar, um, but my reasoning for changing that label was because most people don't know what pansexual is or asexual. So when other people ask me, even now, if people were to ask me, or if I was to say I have a crush on a girl, then I would just call myself bisexual because, in all honesty, it's easier, but it also prevents me from having as horrible as it sounds, hate. And now I know there is biphobia around, and I'm aware of that. I mean, I have got a lot of weird questions where I thought to myself, okay, that wasn't necessary. But there's less questions about it as I found. You get the usual questions like which gender do you prefer? And I got asked once if I wanted a threesome, all of this. And being an asexual person, obviously that's not the case, but also, not all bisexual people want to have a threesome, let's be honest. So it's a very awkward sort of discussion, especially in high school, which is where I'm mainly focusing on. But now, I'm coming up to my 24th birthday, and I'm very comfortable with calling myself asexual and panromantic. Like, for me, that really works. And I will continue to say to the other people that I'm bisexual, and I don't mind either way. Now, I talked about platonic attraction and romantic attraction and sexual attraction a bit here. Just want to go back to platonic attraction because for me, sometimes the differentiating between romantic attraction and platonic attraction is quite difficult because some people may want to hug their friends, or they may want to hold hands platonically, or hug, etc. But for me, it's sort of a fine line between that, where it's sort of, I don't want to say I like people I'm romantically attracted to. I don't want to say I like them more, because again, this whole more than friends, just friends, it's quite toxic, especially to the aromantic community, because then it devalues friendships, and obviously I don't want to do that. But it's quite hard for some people who are both alloromantic and allosexual to sort of differentiate those feelings at first, especially when you might not know the person as well, depending on what sexual orientation you are or romantic orientation, etc. And again, also for me, I can have platonic attraction and aesthetic attraction. So I could find my friend pretty, for instance. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm romantically attracted to them. It just means I find them attractive. And it's that sort of fine line, I find, between those things. Now, let me know in the comments if you felt something like this as well, because for me, it's always been a bit difficult to sort of change that in my mind, and sometimes it's me by myself sort of going back and forth and being like, wait, do I like this person? Do I want to date them? Do I want to be friends with them? Do I want to be best friends with them? So I think there's also a distinction there, and attraction itself is just so complicated. And some people find that, I know, to be true a lot of the time, and some of them can easily define it. Um, I mean, I wouldn't dream of doing this, but some people ask others, what does sexual attraction feel like? And for me, I'm like, is it a heightened version of aesthetic attraction? Is it a more intense version of romantic and sensual attraction? So, sensual attraction, just to remind anyone who doesn't know, is basically wanting to, cuddle, handhold, maybe share a bed together, etc., without really going to the wanting to have the sex itself. And that's always the thing, I had this best friend in high school. Of course, she was the straight girl, and I didn't really understand my feelings for her when I was about 13, but all I knew was that she was my favourite friend. And then I started liking someone else, another girl, at 15. And I thought, wait, this is different from what I thought about her in the past. This is a sort of different dynamic with this other girl that I liked. And then I started to realize, oh, wait, the first girl that was my favourite friend is actually, I was romantically attracted to her, and I just didn't even realize it because I'd liked a boy before, and I just thought, okay, I'm a straight girl, I like a guy, that's all there is to it, really. And then, of course, I found out all of these definitions and these different sexualities, and I really started sort of looking things up and talking to my friends about it who were actually much more knowledgeable than me. I was sort of, I don't want to say backwards because that's not entirely the case, but, I hadn't really looked into it yet. And I was a big ally and a big supporter in LGBTQ rights and marriage and gay marriage and all of this. I just hadn't sort of twigged yet that that's me. So, it's all of these things that I hadn't learnt at school, what I've learnt in the last 5 or 6 years, like sapphic, WLW. I didn't know what that meant before, women loving women. I didn't realise a lot, actually, and it's very interesting how that works. I think that schools need to really teach teenagers about these different things and not only lesbian, gay, bisexual. Don't get me wrong, teaching kids about lesbian, gay, and bisexual is great. I just think it needs to be more focused on those orientations and others as well. And that's why I really wanted to go into my own experience of questioning whether I could be on the Ace Spec or not, or how it's working. I briefly considered that since I do have such strong sensual attraction, that maybe I could be grey sexual, for instance. But again, that doesn't really fit me. At the moment, I'm happy with going with asexual, and we'll see if something different comes up. But anyway, look, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Please tell me more about your experiences. I'd be really interested to know. Sorry if this episode was a bit of a mess. I had a very hectic week, but I hope that it gets to you and should be an interesting thing to find out what you experienced maybe in high school or not even high school. Maybe you were in college or maybe a bit older, and that's fine. Everyone has their own path. I know it sounds really corny and cheesy to say it like that, but you know what I mean. Like, everyone needs to take their time and really know themselves first before they start to use labels that they may or may not stick with, which is also fine. But thank you so much. Again, please comment, subscribe, like, all of that. And I'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.